Did you know that early childhood teachers created a document that tells us exactly what needs to happen if we want to make early childhood programs great places to work? It's called the Model Work Standards, and today you're going to find out what's in it, where it came from, and why it matters to everyone, not just teachers.
Turnover has always been high in early education for a lot of reasons, and many people still feel unsure about what they should do to get teachers to stay. What would you say if I told you there's basically a manual that's been around since the late 90s that tells us what we need to do to keep early childhood educators in the field and support them to be financially, physically, and emotionally well? It's literally a framework designed by teachers themselves on what they need to stay and grow in the same program over time. In the late 90s, an advocacy campaign called for early childhood teachers to send in postcards with what they need to stay in their jobs. These postcards were sorted, themed, and written into what we call the Model Work Standards, and there's two versions. One is for centers, and one is for family childcare owners, because both are equally important, but their needs don't always look the same. The Model Work Standards, both for centers and homes, are organized into categories, where the heading of that category gives you the big picture idea of what it's about, but there's multiple smaller steps under each category that combined create a vision of what that element looks like at its best. As an example, Standard 3 is Employment Policies and Practices. You'll notice there are a lot of statements listed underneath the standard because none of them alone would mean you have great hiring practices. It takes all of them together to be a fair, equitable, and sustainable employer. It wouldn't make sense to have a clear job description and be hired to perform the duties of that job and later be moved to a different position or role without any training for that role, or to move people around without prior notice or consent. That's just one example of why there's multiple indicators of what healthy employment practices look like. We can't pick and choose. We should think about them more like puzzle pieces, where we can't see the full picture if we're missing a piece or two in the end. So we have this list of standards, but what do we do with them? Well, they can be used to reduce turnover in three specific ways. Use the standards to do what you can do in your programs. Advocate for policies and support to do the things you can't do on your own in your programs. And for communities, funders, and policymakers, create policies and provide funding that make the statements in these books true. You're the ones who hold the key for programs to really make this happen, and you'll also benefit from the long-term rewards of healthy, sustainable early education for all children. Programs and family childcare owners can use these as a self-assessment tool, and for programs, they're meant to be considered by all staff to determine what you're doing well and what areas might need some work. Collectively, staff can determine an action plan that's feasible and attainable, and yes, this does take time, work, collaboration, and it won't always be sunshine and rainbows because we don't always see things in the same way. Ultimately, collective decision-making is part of what makes working on the Model Work Standards build a stronger staff. We have to be able to have the hard conversations, grow in our own self-awareness, and work to understand the experiences of others we work with. You'll notice there's some things you just can't do on your own. And that's where advocacy steps in. For example, we know the nature of operating as a business means that we're charging more than families can afford, but not enough to cover the true cost of quality. So there's already a funding gap, which means that the resources just aren't there to do the big things that matter, like increasing compensation or providing health coverage and retirement benefits. But we can use the standards which show what we need to do to keep early care and education programs thriving. And we can use the statements to share with funders and policymakers what we need that we can't provide on our own. And for those of you already in decision-making roles, such as funders, community leaders, or elected officials, pick up the book and use it to help determine what projects and policies need funding or passing. Promoting the standards in this book to fidelity is the answer we've been looking for. We just need to make it happen. You can also ask yourself if a proposed rule or law would make it more difficult for programs to achieve these standards, and use them as a guideline to help you make decisions. Take a look at the model work standards online, share them with your coworkers, families, and policymakers. Start having conversations around what's going well and what we need to work on. The model work standards are still here because early educators still need the same things to stay in their jobs, and they still aren't getting them. Let's take the model work standards and make it happen.